Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Merging Minds podcast. Today, we're interviewing Kevin Russell. I got his book right here, the My Guy on the Ninth Floor. We're going to talk a bit about that, what that means. But Kevin Russell's very big on energy. He's an energetic intuitive who helps people optimize their lives from their energetic foundation. Helps a lot of self-awareness, energy transformation, and he's went through some experience that helped him get to where he is, and now he's helping others do the same thing, and just really expanding consciousness comes to that self-aware and really in tune with your true self. But we're going to go and talk more with him about that. So let's go have that conversation. Hey,
Hey Keith,
hey, how's it going?
good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for coming
Nice.
on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. I kind of just like to learn more about what you do. I got your book here. I want to talk more about
Nice.
this and like
Absolutely.
share with the viewers my guy on the ninth floor. And I know we talked about it a little bit, but kind of wanted you to explain more about what you do and what this means, the title means, and
Yeah,
kind of how
absolutely.
what inspired you.
That'd be great. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
cool.
It's been a progressive journey. Uh, Exclusive of the last year and change, year and a half. I was really just on my own path, doing my own thing. It accelerated within the last 4 years previous to this last year, primarily because my wife and I were introduced to these two modalities, two energy work modalities, subconscious change modalities that really accelerated our individual journeys and our and really healed, transformed, expanded our relationship together. And so that was the gestation period, basically, where I was doing a ton of deep dive, looking at living from an inside out expression instead of the outside in expression that, one, we're born into, and two, pretty much our entire world is based on. Our entire world is based on everybody saying, oh, I know this thing. I've got the credentials, I've got the experience, I've got the deep knowledge, which is great because we need those people, because those are the anchors that we can then explore other ideas with. So people grounded in science, grounded in theology, grounded in philosophy, um, grounded in real world, kind of engineering applications. I mean, if we look at it from a practical standpoint, nationally right now we're at a huge deficit for welders and craftsmen, plumbers, tradesmen, journeymen. So deep diving is very important, but if it's done on the surface and we're not doing that deep dive on the inside, we're kind of only getting half of the equation. And so we can become experts at things because we're interested in them or we're drawn to them. But if we're motivated, then there's an outside influence. If we're inspired, that's inside out. If we're motivated, that's usually outside in. Comparison, judgment, other people's ideas, other people's input. And so I was really looking at it from this inspired direction of like, what resonates with me? What is really hitting me at my energetic core that gives me a big yes instead of, oh, I don't know. And for me, it was just dealing with the years and years of conditioning and programming and subconscious um, gunk, along with energy and emotion that have become embedded within the mind body system, that really led me back to this connection in the fall of 2019, which was a massive enlightenment connection for me. And I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't expecting it. At the time, I would tell people that I just felt like I was a toddler in a dark room, kind of feeling my way around. I could sense there was furniture there. I could kind of make out like a chair or a dresser, like feel a window,
Hmm.
but I didn't have a clear picture of all of it. And then in this one energy session, it's called a Biofield Harmonics healing session. I literally, and from my perception, connected with my higher self, source, God, spirit, the universe, whatever the comfortable term is for people. And it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. I mean, if we're talking it from a video game standpoint, it's like for those of a certain generation, it's that cheat code in Contra, up down, A B, left right. Or if it's the Fortnite generation, it's just getting every single cash in gear stash you can imagine, and basically playing on God mode.
Yeah.
Um, in that experience, the voice in my head shifted, And in my own voice, what I heard was, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you've made it. We're going to have so much fun together." And I was like, "Okay, that's new and different. That's never happened before. That's interesting." And then the information I got afterwards from the practitioner was that, yep, okay, so you just connected to your higher self, because in the process, I was experiencing it. I didn't necessarily have a label for it. And one of the analogies she gave was, it's like you're in a high rise elevator going from the third to the fifth floor. And your guy on the ninth floor is like, "Hey, buddy, up here, this is where the action is." And so just that image of the guy on the ninth floor really stuck with me as the hyper personal expression of a universal that all of us have capacity to connect with. And the reason I put it in the title of the book is because, for that exact reason, the concept is completely universally applicable. And anybody else's expression, it could be Winnie the Pooh, it could be Jesus Christ, it could be uh, SpongeBob SquarePants. It doesn't matter what the avatar is, quote unquote. It's the connection that's the important part, and that's the universal aspect of it. The other information that she gave me after the session was that the information she got was that I'm here to create a new human design. I was like, okay, I'm coming out of this amazing experience thinking, well, I understand human design is already a concept and a practice. So what is different? What's going to be new and different? And so the first thing that popped in my head was a book, and My Guy on the Ninth Floor as the title was kind of locked in from the word go. And then it was about a week of kind of internal reconciliation with all of these changes that I experienced in like basically a 3-hour period. Um, but the next day, for example, was the worst hangover I've had in my life, and I hadn't had anything to drink the night before. My experience was on
Mhm.
a Thursday. This was Friday. Entire body ache, base of my neck, my head was killing me. Cotton headed, couldn't focus, lethargic, kind of listless. And so my wife comes back, and she'd had a session with this practitioner as well. So she comes home at the end of the day, and I'm just kind of sitting at my desk, just like feeling like I've gone 12 rounds with Tyson. And she says, "You need to take an Epsom salt bath." And at the time, I was like, "I haven't taken a bath since I was 5. Like, I take showers. I don't take
Yeah.
baths. Come on." She's like, "You need to try this." I was like, "Okay, fine. At this point, I'll take anything, because I don't even, this is just the worst I've felt." As soon as I got in that bath, it was like ET coming back to life, where the flower comes back. It was like reanimated.
Yeah.
And so the next week, there was some fits and starts of like different aspects of connection and reconnection, and kind of really solidifying that new relationship with myself, or my higher consciousness. And then right about the end of that week, after the session, the book started flying out of me. I was writing like 16, 17 hours a day for about 2.5 weeks. And that was the prescriptive end to end aspect of the book, with basically the practices kind of outlining my journey, moving from victimhood through awareness, recognition, choice, creatorship, and then finally to really what is ultimate freedom, which is that connection, that that baseline connection to our energetic core, to our energetic source, which is then, if we go into kind of the science aspect of it, looking at it from the aspect of quantum entanglement and unified field theory, the same source that all of us experience, even though from an outside in world, we've got different labels for it: Jehovah, Yahweh, Christ, a Buddha, um, uh, Gandhi. I mean, there have been different expressions throughout time with very, very similar and universal messages across the board. And so the book is really a 21st century interpretation of everything that we've known collectively since antiquity, but applied using modern day energy science, um, uh, psychological kinesiology, which is really using our system as the barometer for what's happening at the subconscious level, and marrying all the different kind of disparate aspects of theology, philosophy, um, science, self-help, that I had become aware of, and I'd started onboarding as different tools on my own journey. That this experience, and then the subsequent organization that I experienced writing the book, really connected the dots for me anyway, and of all the different aspects that are seemingly separate to us as humans, but are really 100% connected at their core.
Nice. So the guy on the ninth floor is really about reaching your higher self. That's
Absolutely.
what sound. Okay, cool. Then
Yeah.
that the
So
ninth floor was your higher
yeah, and the ninth floor is going to be different for everybody. It's
self.
not going to be that necessarily that construct or that image. That just happened to be mine,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that's kind of
Was there
the
any,
lens.
like, specific, like, the number 9, was that relate to anything specific, or was just,
Yeah, it was. I'll have to ask the practitioner. It seemed like it was kind of an innocuous analogy at the time,
uh-huh.
but if we go into sacred geometry and we look at 3, 6, and 9
Yeah, I
as
was gonna say that
right,
9 is a
yeah,
number, yeah.
exactly, yeah, and so I had the awareness of that going into this, and when
Yeah,
that analogy was communicated to me, and so I don't think there are any coincidences in life, and so I do absolutely think that that ninth floor was was tethered or tied to the concept of that next layer of consciousness.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow, cool.
absolutely.
That's yeah, that's a cool experience. What how long ago was this?
So the experience was November 21st, 2019.
Oh, cool.
The book flooded out of me in 2.5 weeks that December. And
Nice.
then pretty much the majority of last year up until the book was released on August 8th of last year. So kind of looking at that sacred geometry or sacred numbers again with 8-8 as the release date was I mean the practical application of getting a book birthed basically.
Yeah.
So, at working with editors, working with an agent, getting a publishing contract, and walking away from both the agent and the publishing contract because there was a lot of language that was in and around concepts of in perpetuity, with as far as distribution things like that. I
Yeah.
wasn't ready to make that commitment at that time, so I pivoted to self-publishing, engineer or worked with an engineer on the audiobook. So that was a couple months, and then splitting out and just doing those kind of practical real world things needed to create a platform, get the website, get the distribution of the book up and running, and all those things. And during that time, we were talking at the top of the conversation about kind of what I do. Um, I've been basically practicing I call it rapid energy transformation, and I've been practicing the techniques and the methods for the last 5 years, almost as kind of a self-imposed graduate level boot camp where I just applied everything I was learning to myself, absolutely everything. And I began working with clients or early last year, and that has just progressed. And really, it's coming at the equation of anxiety, depression, trauma, um, abuse and neglect, and we can keep going down that negative end of the spectrum until we get to really, really horrific expressions of our experience. And being able to, within relative short amount of time, assist people in clearing these layers of conditioning that keep us separate from ourselves. And that's one of the awarenesses I've come to is that this whole self-help, self-realization, or healing journey that I'd say every single person at some capacity is on is really a reductive exercise. It's not an additive. We're not adding things in. We need to remove the conditioning and remove the programming. And then that connection actually has always been there. The innate wholeness that we keep searching for in life has actually been there all along. It's the perception that it's separate from us because of our conditioning that is really the work that I help people with. And removing the conditioning and eliminating the traumatized energy and emotions at the subconscious level that contribute to that dis-ease that we experience as life.
I see. Well, so cool. That's what kind of what's like your ideal client? Like what is what kind of struggles a ideal client be having to come to you?
That's a great question, and it's actually one that I've been workshopping lately because I'm trying to not trying because if we go with the tenets of the book, trying is lying. Um, I'm working out what that ideal client is. Um, right now, the definition I'm at is anyone who has maybe taken a few steps on the journey. Maybe they've experienced talk therapy or more traditional psychological channels. even people that have potentially even gone to pharmacological or pharmaceutical intervention for different things. And what they've tried in the past isn't working for them anymore. Um, that would probably be the ideal client of someone who knows that they don't have all the answers, but that also what they've tried isn't necessarily the perfect answer for them. And those really, it's just a willingness, an awareness of, hey, listen, what I've tried isn't working, and I am ready for change in whatever form that takes.
I see. So it's like
Yeah,
whatever it is that they're struggling with or dealing with, it's like a person who's just ready to change in general.
in general, yeah, and
You kinda
that's the sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that was it, just to that make that kinda transition in their life, and then they would come to you to help them do that.
That's really it, and that's the great part of kind of coming at this equation of who we are and why do we experience the things we do from the energetic level is that it is universally applicable.
Mhm.
And part of my own journey is be- an increase in the awareness that everything that we experience in life is completely subjective to our own experience, and nobody expresses or experiences trauma in the same way. One person's innocuous event or seemingly insignificant event is another person's deadly peanut butter sandwich. And
Mm.
so no two people experience life the same way, and no two people will process or experience trauma the same way either. So whereas it's not necessarily speaking to I specialize in anxiety, I specialize in depression, I specialize in PTSD or childhood trauma. um, i I do because the specialization is energy. And once we untangle the energetic layers that are contributing to these expressions of dis-ease, which are really symptomatic expressions, anything that we experience in life that doesn't have either an identifiable source, like a compound fracture or a broken leg, so irritable bowel, leaky gut, restless leg syndrome, angina, anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADD, ADHD, all of these things are natural progressions and expressions of the human experience, but because it's that outside in world, the majority or the status quo hasn't caught up with basically what equates to evolutionary adaptations to our current experiences. And so if we
Cool.
come at it from that energetic standpoint, we can really assist people in making big strides in letting go of the conditioning, moving past that victimhood and getting into that more um, choice and creatorship place. Because a lot of times we don't feel like we have choices in life. We feel subjective to things.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So like what I was thinking or wondering was then what is your process like? Because I mean, you mentioned energy a lot. So how does that work? Like,
Yeah.
is this like a lot of like coach therapy or coach kind of talking? Is it mainly like talking sessions or are you?
No, not so much. I mean, every session does start off with a conversation, and then basically it's a two prong approach. With everyone I work with every session, we identify a focus and a goal for the session. The focus is what we're looking to change. It's the condition that no longer serves us, that we're completely done with and we can't stand anymore.
Yeah.
So this could be like, I keep choosing the same narcissistic guys in my life and I can't get out of these types of relationships. It can be um, agoraphobia, like I'm afraid to leave the house. I mean, it literally any expression of dis-ease is this can be applied to. So identify the focus, and then we identify the goal. A lot of times, people's goals come in the expression of negative. Well, I don't want this. We're very good at identifying what we don't want,
Yeah.
but taking a pause and flipping that to the other side of the coin and stating what I do want in the present, in the positive, and in the first person is one of the first ways that we can actually start making inroads into connecting with our subconscious and actually affecting change at that level. Because, and this is where we get back into quantum entanglement, our subconscious mind body, which in my definition is everything: autonomic nervous system, limbic system, absolute five senses, absolutely everything except for our prefrontal cortex, which is our conscious mind, and our energetic core, which is the universal energy that we all share, our soul, our heart center, spirit, but again, whatever the term is, it's all the same energy. Um, and so within that equation, the subconscious mind body operationally is about 500,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind. And this is why so much of three-dimensional intervention isn't doesn't create lasting change, because an anxiety medication is treating a symptom. It's treating a biological expression of an underlying energetic state of dis-ease within the system. Talk therapy is for many people the first step on this journey, but if that's the only step we take, what ends up happening is the more we revisit the traumas, the more we enter back into revisiting those experiences, the more energetically we embed them within our system, because we take ourselves back to that experience, and our systems, because it's our biological system really operates outside of the physical realm. It operates at the quantum level. And so if we experience a trauma when we're 2 that we don't even remember, and then we enter into an experience when we're in our 20s or 30s that's reminiscent of that experience when we were 2 to our subconscious, it's going to serve up the same program that was written in real time in that experience, which could be basically fight, flight, or freeze. It's a heightened, we get the cortisol dump, we get the adrenaline spike, and we're in action mode. And that's really what PTSD is. It's a program that is running outside of the situation in which it was written, because that's the point that our subconscious says, "Ooh, this kept us alive and safe in the moment, so we're just going to run that same program." And we
Yeah.
get knocked off our center because it kind of comes out of left field, and then we get dropped into anxiety or depression. It's like, where is this coming from? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Those
That's
energetic
did
connections.
you learn all this stuff in the last, like, 2 years since you wrote the book, or what did you do before that?
So yeah, it's funny. In some ways, it's been this last year has been the culminate. I mean, one, it's been the culmination of one part of a journey and the beginning of another part of a journey. Because there is no, I mean, when I had my experience on November 21st, I was like punching my clock. I was like, oh my gosh, I did it. This is enlightenment. I did the thing. Holy
Yeah.
crap, what am I going to do for the next 40 years of my life? And then in short order, I get dropped right back into, yeah, no, that was one plateau, and now you're on another climb of that practical application, sharing the information, and really pivoting hard professionally to doing this work. Um, but so it's been just like everything. It's macro, it's micro, it's hyper personal, and it's universal. So it's been the culmination of my entire life interest. Where I mean, I was raised Irish Catholic, so I had a early example of contrast with that approach to religious practices, that it wasn't fulfilling to me, and it didn't hit that heart space in the same way that for me personally, getting out in nature, surfing has been a consistent theme throughout my life, and I always felt more connected to whatever is greater than us outside or in the ocean than I ever did inside any church. And it's not to say that religion doesn't work. For some people, it does work. But if we are in a place of resistance or judgment or comparison or hatred of the other for any reason, that's not having a spiritual experience. That's having a separation experience.
Yeah.
And that's where religion gets so muddled, is because there is, aspects of quote unquote the word with a capital W across all major world religions. But then all these very human aspects of protection and separation and judgment, have, like sin and guilt, have really come into play as control mechanisms. And whether it was intentional or not, it's just the expression of humans taking concepts that are bigger than us but applying very human aspects to them. And so
Yeah.
that's where that kind of gets a little
Great example,
tangled.
like, yeah, everything's a perspective and how you see
Exa-
things, and
exactly.
yes.
So after that, I really opened up, and I got really interested in Eastern and Western philosophy, looking at everything from Stoicism to Socrates and Plato to the Bhagavad Gita, at Lao Tzu. Looking at pretty much, I'm just open at this point, and this is probably university age, so 17 to early 20s.
Yeah.
Um, Look, I tapped in a little bit with Taoism. The Tao of Pooh is a great book. I recommend everybody check out. And just listening to that heart song, I guess you could say, in a way of just living with what felt like a moral life, because that felt good to me. Not, like being cognizant of never lying. There was a great quote. I can't remember who said it, but they said, "I the re, if you never what was it? I always tell the truth because then I never have to remember anything. Because then we're not keeping we're not keeping score or agenda. It's just speaking
Truth is
truth
the
from
truth. Exactly.
exactly, yeah. So there's that aspect, and then my wife started teaching yoga about 10 or 15 years ago, and so that was kind of our first big step into more Vedic practices. Um, Other things that I've done along the way that really expanded my own awareness, Wim Hof breathing and cold water submersion. That's been a huge one. We did a 30-day raw food challenge at one point with one of my wife's yoga studios, which was an amazing experience of, can I do this? Because it was no meat, no dairy, no sugar, no oil, no alcohol, nothing, no substances outside of raw fruits and vegetables.
Hmm.
And one, it gave me massive insight into what works for my personal system as far as looking at food as fuel. And two, it was a really good mental exercise of, I can do this. It ended up being, my jaw was like, it felt like my jaw was doing deadlifts all day, because I had to constantly eat in order to get the calories required for just stasis. Um, so all of these things were kind of expansive practices or exercises. Um, the other thing that is uh, the start of the book is that I've never really shied away from challenging thoughts or potentially um, you know perceptively damaging thoughts, I guess. And that started with an early experience when I was 12, where there was dis-ease in and amongst my family growing up, and my expression of um, dealing with that, because it was a big lack of control, is really what we boiled it down to. And this is a great example of, I did go to talk therapy when I was like 12 and 13, because of all this stuff going on, and because of my expression or my reaction to all of this state of dis-ease that I was experiencing was to stop eating. And so I was actually anorexic from like 11 or 12 up until 14 or 15. Um, and so that was my first big window into observational awareness, and tap and getting to my thoughts and like, okay, what am I thinking? Where are these thoughts? Why are these thoughts in my head? Who's having these thoughts? And so that was the first one. Then I had an experience when I was 18 where there was it's in the book, and it's just the thought of suicide crossed my mental landscape. And I think the challenge is that we're conditioned to run away from challenging thoughts, or we're conditioned to push back because of this outside in world.
Oh yeah.
And and that's where the issue comes in, because if we have a thought is energy, words are energy.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we have a thought and we don't do anything with it, we kind of like run away from it, that thought stays there. And that's where it can start looping and eddying and become more and more impactful and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, so what would you do? Because I know I for sure experienced that. Like sometimes I get, negative thinking or whatever, and I just
Yeah.
want to like run away or disappear or whatever. So I'll go on a
Yeah.
hike or whatever. But
Yeah.
how would you handle like, yeah, negative thinking? And is it a matter of just processing that, finding like what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's multifold, and actually your approach, like literally physically going on a run, can actually help with that. You're not necessarily running away from it, but you're helping to process the energy.
Yeah.
So if it is a negative thought, and well, one, all of this is a practice. There's no such thing as one and done with this whole journey. There's no silver bullet or magic pill. This is for me anyway. My approach was uh, mental constructs, brain training, and thought exercises. And that's really what was able to, because so, I mean, so much, especially in the West, we're so in our head. And I feel like so many of us are disconnected from our core energy or our heart center.
Uh-huh.
And so I used actually the mechanisms and practices, mental exercises, to make that connection more indelible. So from a daily practice, if we're really looking to kind of become the steward of our internal space, there's a three-prong approach. One, I always recommend starting the day with breathing practices because we're alkalinizing our system, and we are hyper oxygenating our system as well. So that just across the board, biological and psychological and mental processes, it helps across the board. The second one is the practice of shortening the duration from having a reaction to recognizing the reaction for what it was. And this can be anything. Getting caught off in traffic, having these dark or negative thoughts kind of pop into our internal space. And so when we're catching the reaction with recognition, we're basically becoming the governor or the warden of our inside. We're not letting our subconscious mind get away with these things, because at the end of the day, all our subconscious wants to do is keep us safe. But the way it keeps us safe is by running these old outdated programs that then transforms into states of dis-ease within the body. But if we're looking at it from an objective standpoint and not a subjective entanglement, if our subconscious mind body had its way, we'd all be immobilized on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, binging Netflix and eating a pint of ice cream. Because then our system knows we are safe. We are physically, bodily safe. But mentally, we're going off the rails because we're basically being, overrun by the subconscious. And this is another David and Goliath aspect of the subconscious, where not only is it processing at 500,000 times the capacity as our conscious mind, but it runs the show basically 95 to 98% of the time. We go on these, if you've ever been driving and then either gotten to work or gotten home and not realize, like you're talking on the phone, maybe on a headset, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm home. That's literally your system knowing where to go and what to do. And if we're consciously distracted, our body will literally get us to places. So that's kind of a baseline example. And then, so we've got the breathing, we've got the mindful awareness during the day. And then at the end of the day, if we're still feeling these states of dis-ease, there's a body position called a hookup or a whole brain posture, which helps to bring us out of fight, flight, or freeze and back into a balanced dual hemisphere mind state. And so with relaxed breathing, we can get into this posture and take us out of our reactive lizard brain and put us back into our prefrontal cognitive conscious prefrontal cortex. So as
Hmm.
a daily practice, that would be my recommendation.
Okay. So do you believe in like processing the negative thought and kind of like, figuring out where it came from and like why, it's there? And because that was my next question, is like, where do negative thoughts come from? And like,
Yeah,
it's
totally.
good to process that and
100%. And that's a big reason why we have emotions and why we have tear ducts, is so we can process emotion and we can process energy. So often, again, because we're built in or born into this outside in world, we get these influences of boys don't cry, or for the other side of the equation, and we're talking kind of gender stereotypes here. Why do you have to be so emotional? Why is everything just got, as far as a feminine expression, why is everything got to be so dramatic, so emotional? It's like neither camp or nobody in the equation is really afforded the opportunity to process and experience their emotions, so we can learn the practice of experiencing emotion without having us pull us down to the depths. And so when we're at the end of the day, when we're in that kind of whole brain meditative, like, replaying of the day, you can do. And if you feel those sticking points or those points of resistance where it either drops us into a negative feeling, or we kind of feel the tightness in the chest, or any other like, our shoulders start to ache or neck starts to hurt, whatever expression of dis-ease we're experiencing in the body, the two methods that I've found to address it are either let it melt away or lean into it and burn it out. So let's say it's something where we feel alone and like nobody is there for us, nobody understands us. We can either let, just in that whole brain posture, just come to that recognition of, that's not me. I'm not this thing. And one of the major tenets in the book is we are not our thoughts, our emotions, or our reactions. Those are things that we viscerally experience because they're happening in the system in which we are living, but they are not us. They're conditioned reactions or behaviors within the system. And so keeping that in mind, um, So, for example, with my experience, when the thought of suicide crossed my mind when I was 18, I leaned into it, and I didn't let my subconscious get away with any of this nonsense. Um, so, where do they come from? That can be any number of combinations from our entire life. It can be a point of judgment or a comparison, a little toehold of those things that take hold within our psyche, within our subconscious. And then our systems looks at it from the standpoint of, ooh, that'll keep us safe. Yep, let's run that, because safety is basically like compartmentalized restriction on our subconscious level. So if it's something where it's something that we're experiencing outside of ourselves, like somebody cuts us off in traffic, or a coworker, boss, client is we're perceiving that they're doing something to us, that's a good one where, okay, you know what? Nothing anybody else is going through has anything to do with me. Everybody's living their own expression of this world in their own reality. And let's start employing some empathy and some acceptance in our life, and say, okay, well, what could they be going through to then have this be their expression? They're quote unquote coming at us. And it's like, well, they could be going through anything. And then we let ourselves kind of burn out all those possibilities, and then circle all the way back around to, yeah, okay, nothing anybody else does has anything to do with me. But again, these are practices and
Yeah.
mindsets that we start to onboard.
Then yeah, negative thinking sounds like it's just a perspective that we get ourselves into from our experience, and we gotta kind of realize that, acknowledge it, process it, and
Yeah,
shift our perspective.
absolutely. And then two ways to do that internally are either leaning into it with empathy or humor. And so if we're going at it with empathy, the one that I like to do is picture an image or an actual picture of ourselves from when we're younger, let's say 3, 4, 5, of us smiling, and tapping into that, because that's still us. We're still that little kid. And so I'll look at it, if I get this negative thought, or a self-defeating or self-depreciating energy, I'll just come at it with empathy and just be like, and so yeah, my name is Kevin, so I'll just be like, oh, little Kev, and I'll get that image in my mind. It's like, you're good. I got this. I'm the captain of our ship. We're in good shape.
Gotcha.
Or humor. There's another individual who's in the space. His name is Sa, and I believe he's either transgender, or he cross dresses. I'm not quite sure which one, but he's fabulous. And he's got a great one where he calls that negative thought, if he has that recognition, he calls his Bianca. And so he'll just be like, not today, Bianca. And so it really is that becoming a steward in
Gotcha.
whatever way makes sense. We can do it with humor, we can do it with empathy,
Yeah,
but the recognition and the awareness is really the most important part. And
yeah.
then the expression of that internally is hyper individual.
Yeah, I like that method because I mean I know I struggle with this or have struggled with it as well, and I'm sure a
Right.
lot of other people. When we have negative thoughts, we tend to like engage in it, and that's where the
Yeah.
anger and all those emotions come up. But if we just kind of pause and like acknowledge it and realize it and take a step back
Yeah.
and then process it, that's
100%.
that's cool. Well, man, that was yeah a lot of great information. I don't wanna let it run for too long, but
No worries.
thanks so much for sharing. Where can people find you?
Yeah. On social, Instagram, it's if you go radical underscore enlightenment, I'm there. Facebook, radical enlightenment. I'm on Clubhouse as my name, Kevin D. Russell, is my at. And then if you want the hub for everything, it's the website, radicalenlightenment.com. Um, Tons of tools, workshops, classes, everything around that, the tools that we've used on our journey, that really, for me, it was basically like a 4 or 5 year sprint from my wife and I almost being to the point of, okay, this isn't working for us, to literally connecting to my higher self. And the book is the guide on how to do that anybody can employ. And then it's just also the perspective and practice of the unification of science, theology, and philosophy. And because we're all trying to explain the same thing.
Yeah.
Religion's trying to explain God through belief. Self-help spirituality is trying to explain God through experience, and science is trying to explain God through observation. But it's all the same thing.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we're all one.
Exact, 100%.
All is one.
Exactly. That's
Everything's a
it.
perspective and a piece to the puzzle, and we're just got to
Yeah.
put it together. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the more that we can come to that individual understanding, realization, acceptance that we are an integral piece. Each and every
Mhm.
human on this planet is an integral piece of this puzzle, but we are the puzzle.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly, exactly.
it's and it you could perceive this journey as selfish, but really the only way that we can heal collectively and expand collectively is if we first do that internally for each and every one of ourselves individually.